Mets and Knicks were in Game 5 when O.J. started that fateful drive. His four-way hazard lights were blinking, and no one knew what the Jews was thinking.
I've been to Reno, Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, Buffalo, Toronto, Winslow, Sarasota, Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa, Oklahoma, Tampa, Panama, Mattawa, La Paloma, Bangor, Baltimore, Salvador, Amarillo, Tocqueville, Barranquilla, and Padilla, I'm a killer. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Crossed the desert bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. Of travel I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
This is Oversight Live, your advocate for good governance. We're putting the site back in. Oversight. Here's the watcher on the wall, your host, Ben Carpenter.
Good evening, Alaskans. Welcome to Oversight Live. I am Ben Carpenter, your host, and Oversight Live is your road to Juneau until we can get one built. All right. So, Oversight Live is intended to bring you legislative happenings that you cannot get to Juneau to witness yourself, and provide a forum for you to ask questions and get your questions answered that you might be confused about or want more information on. I spent 6 years in the legislature, in the House to be exact, and I am using my experience to help other people understand what is happening in Juneau. There is a lot going on, a lot of committee meetings and a lot of things going on. Too much to cram into a show such as this. So what I am doing for you is prioritizing what I think is most important for you to understand and for you to know about, and that you might have questions about, so that we can address them and get them answered. If you have questions, excuse me, we're broadcasting on YouTube, X, and Facebook, and in your chat window. If you just chat your question to me, or you can send it on an email, producer at oversightlive.com, and I'll do my best to answer it live on air. If you're watching the recording, then the live chat's not available to you. Go ahead and email it. Again, producer at oversightlive.com, and you can, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. If don't be surprised if we use the question on air and have a conversation about it, because the whole point here is to edify all of us. And if you have a question, it's likely that other people have the same question. So we're just going to use it as a teaching moment and talk about it. Only dumb question is the one that's unasked, and you still have a question and are no better for it. So let's ask good questions, and that raises our awareness. That is how we provide good oversight, by becoming smarter about issues. Okay, so we've been focused on pipeline business, and we're going to continue that tonight. Unfortunately, what does he say, Rick? Did you sat roar to Juneau? Good opening. I'm not sure what you mean. Talking about a road to Juneau? Yeah, that's what it is. Look, we had Senate Resources had their meeting today, and House Resources had their meeting today. Interestingly enough, Senate Resources, they must have had too much from last week, or yesterday, sorry. This is their meeting on the website. If you click on the website link for the Senate Resources meeting, this is the meeting that was held today. We're not going to watch it, because what actually happened today was they scheduled four pieces of legislation. They didn't take up HB 117. See, it was canceled. They took up HB 79, heard it and held it. They took up HB 93, heard it and held it. And the only thing they moved out of committee was a joint resolution that really doesn't mean anything. It's just a statement. Okay. So instead of passing out a tax bill, we passed out a resolution that is just a statement of intent or statement of opinion by the legislature. It's not binding. It's not changing law. It has nothing to do with pipelines. And we will have to save passing out a bill from Senate Resources for the pipeline for another day because they failed to do so today. After yesterday, it's not surprising. It was a painful meeting. They probably have got all sorts of questions, and maybe they don't even have agreement within their group right now as to what the bill is supposed to look like that they're going to pass out. Okay, what are we gonna look at tonight? Well, there's a rather lengthy meeting that happened in House Resources. We're going to pull that up. And problem is that it's a sausage fest. They took up amendments today, and the amendment process is a messy process. Lots of questions, lots of going back and forth, and bless their hearts, the chairs are inexperienced and they're doing the best that they can to herd cats and figure out what the right solutions are and find their subject matter experts to give them good advice and all of that. It was a struggle. But we're going to listen to a little bit of it. The stuff that I think that is instructive, we'll probably skip around a little bit and catch the end of the meeting. So let's get started with this meeting.
Pass the gavel over with that. Co-Chair Dybert, I move amendment number 28.
I will object for purposes of discussion.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dybert. I'd like to invite my my committee aide, Calvin Zulo, up for explanations on amendment number 28. Thank you, Calvin, for being here.
Good afternoon. For the record, this is Calvin Zulo, staff to Representative Freer. So Amendment 28, I have a very short 2-slide presentation here. Amendment 28 simplifies the AVT structure. So instead of 3 AVTs broken out across project components, there's one alternative volumetric tax. It's set at 15 cents per 1,000 cubic feet of pipeline throughput, and it's applied at first gas. There is no abatement period under Amendment 28. And then it keeps the revenue distribution from version G. And then it applies municipal property taxes to the gas treatment plant on the North Slope and the LNG facility in the Kenai Peninsula. The equity election language is also simplified. There's no AVT option under Amendment 28. So those 2 boroughs could choose to collect local municipal taxes, property taxes, or take equity in the project in lieu of property tax revenue. This municipal property tax application is a reduction from the oil and gas property taxes, and it empowers those 2 boroughs to further reduce the tax burden on the project unilaterally based on negotiations with the project developer. And if there are any questions, happy to take them.
Thank you, Mr. Zulo, for your explanation of Amendment 28. Are there any questions? Representative Fields and then Representative Sadler.
The way the tax reduction works is it takes it from 20 mils down to 18, so the borough can collect their maximum, but the state is not collecting the 2. Is that correct?
So in the North Slope borough, the mill rate is 17.99 mils. There would be no state collection of tax.
Okay.
And then the borough could lower that mill rate or modify it by ordinance. On the Kenai, I think the mill rate is 7 mils, which is much lower than 20.
Follow up,
Good.
Representative Fields.
But I think the amount of reduction is on the state side, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Mr. Zulo?
On the North Slope borough, yes. In Kenai, it's a 7 mil rate versus a 20 mil rate.
Okay. could I ask a follow-up?
Yes, follow up.
So how much state revenue would be lost in Kenai?
Mr. Zullo.
I don't have that math prepared for you.
Is DOR on the line? Could they explain that?
Let's look.
Well, Mr. Zullo is doing his best, and I've never seen him in the legislature. Must be new with the new legislator. Doing a really good job as far as I'm concerned. He's seems to be can speak well and is on top of the facts. I think what they just said is they dropped it from 20 mils to 18 mils, and the Kenai is at 7. So if you do the math, it's what is it, 11 that the state would still be getting, as opposed to the North Slope borough, which is a completely different. They tax a higher number of mills. So if you're at 18 on the North Slope borough and the state drops it to 18, then the state doesn't get anything, but the borough continues to get 18. So I think the math that they're looking for is 11 is what the state would continue to get, because the borough is only ever getting 7, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, this is a lengthy process on this amendment.
If DOR is online,
We've got
DOR doesn't have
they
answers.
are online. That would be.
Okay, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit.
Through the chair, currently the LNG plant, which is the majority of the assets of the Alaska LNG project in the Kenai Peninsula Borough, is not subject to the state oil and gas property tax. However, the state would lose some revenue associated with the pipeline. However, that is anticipated to be excluded anyway through the AVT, or alternate volumetric tax.
Representative Fields.
If I really appreciate the follow-ups just so I can understand this. So if this was an export facility for AK LNG, would that change the potential to collect property taxes that in any way would flow to the state? Or are you saying that even as an export plant, this represents no lost revenue from the state?
The chair, for the portion of the revenue on the Kenai Peninsula Borough associated with the Alaska LNG plant, this would not represent a decrease in revenue to the state. The LNG plant, or the gas treatment plant on the North Slope, would represent a small decrease in revenue to the state.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Herbert. Next in line of questions, I have Representative Sadler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to clarify just a little point before I ask my question. I just want to make sure I heard you clearly, sir, that you're saying that if Amendment 28 were adopted, there will be a slight reduction in the state of Alaska's property tax income on the LNG facility in the Kenai Peninsula Borough. It would not be much, but it would be some. Is that a fair restatement?
Mr. Herbert.
Through the chair, there would not be a decrease in the state's property tax revenue from the LNG plant in the Kenai Peninsula Borough. There would be a decrease on the GTP plant on the North Slope Borough.
Okay. Very good.
Why was that? Because he said that the plant in the Kenai Peninsula Borough wasn't subject to the tax.
Good. And I'm going to ask my next question, but before you answer, Mr. Herbert, I'm not sure if you're on a wireless or headset or something, but handsets are much more clear communication for us, if you would. And I think Mr. Zulu said that this amendment would allow the boroughs to lower their property tax rates. I think theoretically that might be the case. Actually, I apologize. This is actually directed toward Mr. Zulu. You said it would allow the boroughs to lower their property tax rates. Under what circumstance would they do that? They would be giving up money. Why would they? There may be theoretically possible, but why on earth would they?
Thank you, Rep. Sadler.
Thank you,
Mr. Zullo.
Through the chair, Representative Sadler, again, for the record, Calvin Zullo, staff to Representative Freer. So local mill rates are set by local ordinance. So this would empower them to negotiate with the project developer with community benefits, some sort of arrangement in which they would lower their mill rates.
So follow up.
Follow up.
To the extent I heard you, I think I understand you to say that this would provide a forum, a bazaar in which the borough could negotiate side deals on community benefit with the project. Is that what I heard you say?
That's correct.
That's I think that would tend to add complexity and uncertainty to the project, but so that's a little bit problematic for me.
So I think as we're going to hear when they reach out to Mark Begich again, is that the intent here with this amendment is to maintain the taxing authority at the borough level, and then just trust that the borough's not going to tax. They're going to lower their taxes is something that is negotiated with Glenfarne, with the project, and come up with some other arrangement, some other cost sharing or cost, I don't know what the right word is, cost reimbursement arrangement from the project to the borough in lieu of a property tax, meaning you submit your receipts and we'll cover your expenses based on certain things that we agree to in the agreement. But the taxing authority is still there and subject to the whims of the borough assembly. So at any time they could raise the taxes, which is a problem for the predictability piece of this, for the financiers of the project, right? I mean, this is the whole point of bringing this to the legislature and changing it to a volumetric tax and getting rid of the property tax, is because you are keeping risk of fluctuating costs into the future by having the property tax structure. That is both through through lawsuits, or in this case, through assemblies that might want to raise taxes later. You never know. We have a crisis in 7 years and now we got to raise taxes, raise on the project. And that's a problem for making a decision now. Anyway, let's follow along here.
That's the end of my questions.
To answer your question real quickly, I know that you'll think I'll forget about it. Rick asks a good question. How long can a bill stay in a committee? Indefinitely. Indefinitely, as long as the legislature allows it. That's what I'll say. So a couple of things. Once the committee receives a bill, that bill becomes that it's owned by the committee. Okay. They can talk about it forever. They can amend it forever. They can let it sit on the shelf and collect dust forever. And many bills, that's what happens. They come to a committee and they never leave. Okay. If the majority members of the committee, let me back up and say, if the majority of the committee members, doesn't have to necessarily be the majority members of the majority caucus. If the majority of the quorum, the majority of the committee wants to move the bill out of committee, then they can just move. Anybody can make the motion to move the bill out of committee. And if the chair objects, but doesn't have the votes to keep it in committee, then the members of the committee can move it out. Okay. That's if the bill is up before them. Actually, technically the bill does not have to be up before them. It can be in the committee, just not being discussed. So there are a number of bills, like we saw with Senate Resources briefly. There were 4 bills there. Any of the members could take those bills and ask to make a motion to discharge them from committee. And if the majority of the members said yes, then it would be discharged to its next committee of assignment or committee of referral. Another way that the committee bill can leave the committee is from the floor of the House or the Senate. During a floor session, the majority of that body can make a motion to eject. It's basically remove the bill from the committee that it's currently assigned to and move it to its next committee of referral. So if the majority of the committee wants to move it, they can. If the majority of the body either the House or the Senate wants to move it out, they can. That's very rarely done, but I've seen it attempt to be done numerous times, and I think I've seen it happen once. I think. Well, I know that I've seen it at least once. Might be of other times, but it's a situation where maybe one committee chair doesn't want to see a bill move forward, but the rest of the majority does, and so they override them. So that is the way. Those are the ways that the committee can move it out over the objection of the chair. But realistically, if the committee doesn't want to challenge the chair, or the body doesn't want to challenge the chair of the committee, because I mean, what can happen? You set that precedent, and then you're rolling the chairs of all the committees, and it breaks down the majority, the trust in each other. So it's done very sparingly. So the short answer is it can stay there indefinitely. It does not have to move out anytime soon. And you've got bills that arrive in the first session and never leave even through the second session. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Okay. That's a totally different question. I don't know how much you would have to. Probably a lot. And then somebody would go to jail, because that could be seen as bribery. All right, let's continue on here.
Representative Prox.
I guess I would like to hear from the project sponsor and I guess Mr. Begich. Get their thoughts on this amendment.
All right. Thank you, Representative.
After what happened in Senate Resources yesterday, of course the minority wants to hear what Senator Begich has to say.
Prox, Mr. Prestige, would you like to come up to the dais and state your name for the record and give us your thoughts on this amendment?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Adam Prestige from Glenfarne, project sponsor as a joint venture with the state of Alaska in 8 Star, Alaska. My thoughts on this on this amendment specifically and the process in general. There's been a tremendous amount of work and collaboration with the different municipalities, with this committee that have gone into this bill. There have been some amendments. I think one that's upcoming that reflects, I think, a very successful collaboration with the municipality to come out to a solution that works. Quite frankly, from the project's perspective, we don't view Amendment 28 as a legislative option that does work for the project for some of the reasons that have been cited here. One of the main things to consider, and again, I urge the committee to take under recognition, is that this is already a very complex and challenging project. And so with many of these amendments that have been proposed, the question it starts to feel like, how much more challenging can we make an already challenging, very challenging generational project before it just becomes impossible? To be a little bit more specific, the governor's bill proposed an AVT tax of 6 cents that was applied on the entire project, 6 cents total. What I see here with this proposal is, and please correct me if I'm interpreting it incorrectly, a 15 cents on the pipeline itself, leaves in place another 10 cents on the LNG facility, and then an unknown tax on the gas treatment facility. And so you end up with, obviously far more, more than 25 cents of tax relative to where we view the project as needing to be at 6 cents. So that's a challenge. There's also the obvious challenge that has been discussed in this forum and others, that issuing equity in exchange for tax relief doesn't get a project built. You issue equity in exchange for dollars that are spent to pay the laborers and to buy the pipeline and to get it installed. So that's the other major concern. And then lastly, inserting just more hurdles of negotiation, breaking out more pieces and more conditions that have to be satisfied and more parties to negotiate with that can hold the project up, will have the effect of holding the project up.
Thank you, Mr. Prestige, for your testimony. Follow up, Co-Chair Freer.
Yeah, thank you. I would just, we sat here back in March shortly after, through the co-chair, we sat here back in March shortly after the governor's bill 381 was introduced. I pushed back that we were at day 363 is what I recall when we had you before us. And there was testimony that property tax, we always knew that property tax was going to be an issue. The conversations with the boroughs, the municipalities, the mayors began in December with some of them, not all of them. And I think that there's opportunity for continued negotiations. I think you've already been negotiating with the mayors. And so what this does is it puts a 15 cents for 1,000 cubic feet of pipeline of throughput applied at first gas. It allows the municipalities at the top and the bottom to have those negotiations or continue those negotiations. There's nothing in here that says that with it being taxed under 2945 that the property tax has to be $17.99. I think that is a negotiation that the project producer could have, but I think that's recognition. I want to say, out of the 60 members that represent the legislature, I'm the only one from the North Slope, so I have to put something forward that could potentially be supported. These are resources that will be extracted. I mean, this is gas that's coming from my district to benefit the rail belt. And I recognize that we have, if you look at the makeup of this committee, we have 5 folks from the municipality of Anchorage. We've got 1 from Kenai, 2 from Fairbanks, and then me. And this is an amendment that I think works. I think when we're also talking about 15 cents, the 6 cents was based on a project that's approximately $46 billion from a number that AGDC put out in, I think, 2023. Is that correct? And I don't know if that is the correct number. I think 15 cents kind of relates more to what the actual project cost may be.
Okay. So somebody help me because I'm not following the math here. If the project is more expensive to build, the state has a justification for higher tax because it's worth more, because it costs more. I'm not sure I follow the logic here. Can somebody help me out? I hope that they'd talk about this. Maybe Mark Begich will cover it, but I'm not sure I follow the logic that says if it's $40 billion, 15 cents is too much. But if it's $50 billion, then 15 cents is enough. That's the right number. I don't like the cost of the tax has nothing to do with the building of the project. The cost of the tax is recouped through the sale of the gas. Not like if the gas is the same cost, but the project is half the cost, then I don't get it. Maybe it's a concept of property tax thinking, right? I have if the project cost is less, that I have a lower mill rate. But if the project cost is more, I have a higher mill rate. Is that what we're thinking here? Because anyway, there's something there that I'm not. I'm not the tax man. I'm not expert on property tax here. I subscribe to the Miguel Ramirez thought here that we shouldn't have any property tax. Like I'd like taxes to be collected some other way. That way I can actually own my own home outright and the government can't come take it from me. That because it's private property. It's my my domain, my castle. I'm not renting it from the government. Anyway, not exactly sure that I'm understanding why, because we have a sneaking suspicion or we have doubt that the project's going to be the cost that the again, I don't know, maybe it probably is more expensive, but why does that mean we have a right to tax it more? I don't get that. Okay.
And so that is the purpose of this amendment. There are other components of the underlying bill that we've had in there to protect the impacted communities. We've included the municipality of Anchorage. The municipality of Anchorage is participating in those negotiations. But I don't see this to be unrealistic to me. And I think that my staff had a comment to make, and
all right, thank you, co-chair, for your can we let Mr. Zullo go, and then it looks like Representative Fields has a comment too, and then Mr. Prestige. Mr. Zullo.
For the record, Calvin Zullo, staff to Representative Freer. I just wanted to clarify that under this amendment, there is no 10-cent AVT applied to the LNG facility. It's just the 15 cents on the pipeline. The LNG facility and the gas treatment plant on the North Slope are taxed under municipal property taxes.
Representative Fields, did you want to add to?
I support the amendment and call the question.
Mr. Zulu knows what he's talking about, I think. At least if you don't know, it just sound bold and people will think you know. But I think he's a fairly sharp aide there.
I would object.
Call the question, huh?
that's your call to make.
Okay.
So when Representative Field says, I like the amendment, I call the question. That's actually a motion if you're actually making it. If you're actually saying this in the parliamentary procedure, I call the question. It is actually, I call the previous question is what you're actually supposed to say. But the effect of it is to end debate. And now we're going to vote on the amendment or whatever's before you, whether it's a passage of the bill or whatever. Problem is that there's other people that still want to ask questions. So as long as the majority will say, yes, we'll vote to sustain, because Sadler objected to call the question. So that means they have to vote on it. If there's a majority that wants to end debate and vote on the amendment, then that's what happens. The debate ends and they vote on it and it passes or fails. If they don't vote on it or it doesn't pass the vote, then they continue debate. We'll see what happens.
Can we speak up? I can't hear you.
All right.
Madam Co-Chair, if I can just make one last comment.
Yes, please, Mr. Prestige.
Thank you, Adam Prestige from Glenfarne. I do want to say we recognize that this is a process, and we have appreciated a good dialogue with the mayor's group, and we look forward to continuing to work on negotiations and discussions to make sure that this project and the community benefits and impacts are structured the right way.
Thank you for your wrap up. Representative Sadler.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure if you've acknowledged that what I heard is a motion, but I just want to say that we have spent 7.5 hours yesterday. We still have an hour and 15 minutes or more. I haven't had to continue now. I do not see the necessity of limiting debate in this very significant amendment. I respect every member's right to call a question out, but I'm going to vote against it. I think it's inappropriate. I think it's imprudent. I think it's irresponsible. We need to discuss this, know what we're voting on. And I don't know if I should take the opportunity now to talk about my issues with the amendment, or we're just on that motion.
Can you take a brief at ease?
Yep, brief at ease.
Okay, now they got to figure out what to do. So that's what you do when you don't know what you're doing, or you're losing control. You take a brief at ease and talk about it. Get some advice on what to do. We're going to fast forward here and come back to it because we can.
Hear Mr. Begich's thoughts on this amendment. So, Mr. Begich.
Okay, I'm not going to go back. So what ended up happening is they removed their objection and Representative Fields removed his call for the question so they can continue debate. That's what happened. They didn't have to vote on it.
If you can hear us, state your name and begin your statement on Amendment 28.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize. I was late, so I didn't hear all the debate, but we are talking about Amendment 28, and this is switching the gas treatment plant to out of Title 43. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Here is questions and concern, and I apologize if these have been addressed, but this is the concern with the amendment. First off, when it is shifted out of 43, in theory, it should fall under 29, which would be taxable property under Title 29 under the municipal codes under the state statute. The question is the following. The concern would be, does that mean they have to charge their current municipal rate? Because under Title 29, you can't have differential rates unless there's a specific exemption. If that is answered, great. That's the concern that we would have. Second, if it doesn't have a cap on it, then we are subjected to a negotiation that could end up, frankly, the project being held hostage to a rate that may be higher than economically viable because you don't have a cap. There's no limitation to what they can charge. They go all the way up to the maximum allowable under a negotiation process. We would hope everyone would be reasonable, but these negotiations are somewhat difficult at times. The other issue is it does create a differential rate structure if it's a mill levy versus everything else is an ABT. So that would be a concern. The most important thing about this project is ensuring we have a unified system of taxation so it's clear and we know it's predictable. We know what it is, easy to manage. But if you do similar to what Kenai has, then I believe you, again, have to have an exemption under Title 29 for that to occur. But in either case, we would want to have some management and control on what that rate would be so we have some predictability. Otherwise, if we can't reach an agreement, then they'll have unilateral capacity to put the mill levy wherever they want or whatever the tax is. So I would say those are some concerns that are there. Now, do I believe all those could be worked out through this amendment? Yes, I do. But those are the concerns we would address to Amendment 28.
Co-Chair Dybert.
Thank you, Mr. Begich. Co-Chair Freer, do you have a follow-up?
I do. I would just note that we do have Emily Nauman on the line, and she's the amendment drafter, and I would like to hear from her about some of what Mr. Begich's concerns are.
Okay. So, what just happened? You've got Mark Begich, attorney. Is he attorney? Businessman? He's advisor for the governor. So he's representing the executive branch in this conversation. Okay. So he's presenting an opinion, and the co-chair, the representative from the North Slope, has just called upon the head lawyer for the legislature to get an opinion on what Mark Begich said. Okay. Senate Resources doesn't have their own attorney, so they have to look to the legislative attorney. But their role is largely in drafting legislation, not in. They do answer questions regarding legislation, but not in representing a particular philosophy or objective from a committee chair or committee in general. What, a committee is having a hard time figuring out how to pass a bill. The attorneys are there to do what is requested, not give them ideas on how to solve the problem. Anyway, let's see how this works out.
Ms. Nauman, if you could hear us, state your name and help us answer some of these concerns or questions.
I want a lifeline. Somebody help.
For the record, this is Emily Nauman, Director of Legislative Legal Services, and I heard a general discussion, but a more direct question my way would be helpful.
She's like, I don't know what to say. You guys are the ones that are in charge. It's your committee. If you got a question for me, give me a question. Otherwise, I don't know what you want from me.
For the record, this is Calvin Zulo, staff to Representative Freer. Could you speak about the variable mill rate issue for the North Slope Borough specifically?
There's the leader at the committee meeting.
Through the chair to Mr. Zulo, I don't have particular knowledge of the local municipal taxes, so I unfortunately am not the right person to weigh in on this. I can talk generally about how the bill or the amendment functions, but I think that's already been pretty well established. I could see if our municipal law attorney could jump online and join the committee, but I would also doubt that he has particular knowledge about individual borough rates.
And that, my friends, is what a good staff member does. They bail the boss out. They bail him out. We don't know what to do. The attorney isn't helping us, and we don't know what question to ask. And so the staff member just knows, hey, I got to come up with a question to save the boss's hind end here. Good on you, staff member Zulo.
Thank you.
Co-chair Freer.
Thank you. And just to follow up, the purpose of setting the gas treatment plant and the AKLNG, the export facility, back under 2945 is to allow the local municipalities to enter into negotiations and to work with the project developer. I believe in specific ordinances. In the municipal governments, they have the ability to do those kinds of negotiations already, a PILT or setting a different mill rate. And we heard from the Department of Revenue that there would be very little or no state revenue lost potentially on the North Slope with the gas treatment plant. But what I'm trying to encourage is a negotiation between the project developer with the municipalities at the top and the bottom of the project.
So this is where she wasn't listening to my what I said in a number of shows ago. Okay. Obviously. If you're trying to encourage something, then you write in law, because that's what the legislature does. You could put it in a resolution instead of a bill, and then it would just be an opinion. But if you want to encourage it, as in it has teeth, then you put it in law and you say, thou shalt do X, Y, or Z, or thou shalt not do X, Y, and Z. Okay. That's how you encourage it. That's the mechanism of the legislature. All right. So all you would have to do is write the law to say this entity is going to provide a borough with a thing through an agreement that they reach. Okay, that's what you would do. And once it's in law, then the two entities are then have a statute that they can point to that says, okay, you have a responsibility and you have the thing to tell me what I need to pay you for, right? So, for example, if you're going to have some sort of purchase reimbursement program, you can call it a program. Expense reimburse program for cost reimbursement program, whatever you want, for the cost for the project on the municipalities. Call it a municipality cost reimbursement program. What's the acronym for that? Is that CRAP? CRP? Cost reimbursement program? That's a CRAP program? Okay. Maybe that's not the right name for it, but you get my drift. The cost reimbursement program, you establish that in law that says that the assembly can vote a receipt to go to this program, and the Glen Farn as the responsible party with that program then has to cover the cost of that receipt. You just establish that program in law, and then they have to reach agreement on this. Okay. It doesn't have anything to do with the tax structure. You're not setting up the tax. You're not leaving an open-ended tax authority for the borough assembly to dick around with in future years, which is exactly what you're doing here, which is exactly what the project says we need to avoid. We need to avoid the property taxes altogether because somebody's going to sue over the valuation at some point in time, or a reevaluation, a reassessment of the property value in the future. And then the costs add up, and nobody seems to be having the conversation in this committee about that particular subject. All they're thinking about is dollars and cents. How much money am I going to get? How much am I giving up for a project that might not even get built if you're only giving it a $2 million reduction, right? What happens with the cost of the project with a volumetric tax? If the volumetric tax, thank you to a good reference from the legislature tonight. If you've got the volumetric tax on a certain size of project and the project cost goes up, does the tax of the volumetric tax go up as well? Do you actually end up with more revenue in the future? I'm not sure. These are questions that need to be asked on the record, right? If you want to encourage something, you set it up in law. What is current in law and what is encouraged currently is for the municipality to look to the entity, the private entity, as a solution to its revenue problems. That's what you're incentivizing through your property tax. Every time educators need more money, what is the push? It is, well, we need to raise taxes. We're either going to raise the mill or lower the mill, right? That's the mechanism that you have. So you're setting up the incentive to say costs go up in the future, inflation goes up, well, we're going to have to raise taxes. That's what you do. That's why the project is saying we need to remove this from the equation. It adds uncertainty to the project. I don't know how to say it anymore, plainly.
Mr. Begich, if that answers your question.
I'm on. Sorry, Madam Chair. I go on every time I finish, they put me on mute, so I have no way to respond. But thank you for the question. There's two parts to this, and I totally appreciate the input there in regards to the goal, and that is to negotiate something. But under Title 29, unless you have a specific, as a former mayor who's gone through this before, we have military housing in Anchorage that has a special rate structure that required an act of the legislature to allow us to have an exemption under Title 29 to that. If you have a single mill rate, which currently is about 14 point something in Fairbanks and North Slope, along with their school district, they are at 17.99. If they have a property that they want to have a lower rate mill levy, my understanding of the law is you have to have an exemption by the state. Otherwise, all properties within the jurisdiction of that borough must be the same rate unless it's a special service area. So the goal is our goal. Your goal is our goal. But the mechanism that I see in front of us is problematic in the way it's crafted. On top of that, I didn't talk about the equity concern we would have of how they are designing their equity language. So again, Madam Chair, I believe if given a little bit of time, we could probably craft 28 to meet your goals and allow us to negotiate. But right now, what happens if the way we read this, if this goes the way it is, it automatically falls then under 29 with no exemption, which means whatever rate structure they have as a mill levy today in the North Slope will be the mill levy they will be required to charge for the property and now will be in their jurisdiction. And that.
Okay. So I just want to point something out here, and I need to, obviously we're talking about the North Slope Borough's tax desires here, because their representative is the co-chair who brought forward the amendment, right? And that representative staff member is sitting there bailing her out. Okay, so they're working together as a team here. The staff are to represent their district. I can't fault them for that. That's what they're there for. Okay, but here's the thing. Begich is alluding to another issue that we haven't talked about much, and that is the equity buy-in or the investment in the project. Yesterday, we heard in Senate Finance from Glenfarne that said they're more than willing to have boroughs buy in equity into the project within the 25% as part of the 25% ownership rights that the state has. So if 25% ownership means the state's got to come up with $10 billion to exercise that, and the North Slope Borough wants to put in half that, and they have half the 25% equity, 12.5%, whatever it ends up being with all the other equity holders. If that's what they want to do, then Glenfarne's on board with that. So you literally have a situation where the borough mayor is negotiating, and ultimately it probably pulls to the assembly to back him up. But the borough is negotiating here to get the maximum tax and also be able to use their resources, because they have a lot of it, to invest in the project. So this is a double play, in my opinion. These are Ben's words, right? I don't have a better word for this. It's just a double play. It's a double take, if you will, from the North Slope Borough that's saying, hey, look, this is our economy. It's the only thing we've got for an economy. We're a subsistence lifestyle up here. Oil and gas is the way we make our money. We want to tax it, and we want to invest in it, because we've done our due diligence, and we've saved our money, and we've got money set aside that we could invest in this project. Okay. They've got a permanent fund up there. They've got a savings account that's over $1 billion in it, right? They've got money to invest in the project. So we turn this around and we say, well, the logical next question is, what happens if the project doesn't get built? Do you get to invest in anything? Do you get to make any taxes from it? So there's a balance here that has to be drawn. And if you're going to adhere to this concept of taxation, property taxation, then and it's set at a rate. I mean, you're only talking 2 mils below what the current law is. That's not much of a tax break. And the project is saying it needs down to 2 mils from 20, not down 18. So what happens when this kills the project? Then you don't get your investment and you don't get your taxes. This is where you factor in the greed part of it, because it's a very strong motivation for the people on the North Slope to be getting maximum value, maximum taxes, maximum out of this project, because they see it as a, I mean, it doesn't come along every day, right? Projects on the North Slope are few and far between. They take a long time to permit. The federal government is against them most of the time. They have a desire for economic growth or economic activity up there too. I have to put myself in their shoes. But there is a realistic point at which you're asking too much. And it is my judgment call that if you're dropping your tax rate from 20 mils to 18, and you're recognizing that you intend to invest in the project and you're going to make money that way, then you've got room. If you're going to make money through your investment, you've got room to drop your taxes, because it only benefits you in the long run if you drop the taxes, because you're a part owner of the project. Why fight over this tax piece, people? This is ridiculous that we're fighting over the taxes for a project that squeaks by pennies and nickels. All right, let me catch up on some questions here. Yeah. Dean, that's right. And I'm not a parrot for Glenfarne. I'm the one that was saying Glenfarne needs to come up with a solution here for paying for local costs. They don't want to have additional costs up front. But that is something that they cannot just put the costs of the project on the local taxpayers. they have to accommodate the local municipalities for the costs in the project. So I'm not a mouthpiece for Glenfarne, but this is exactly what they're been saying with regard to, I mean, if you're listening to what it takes and just thinking about what it takes, trying to understand what it takes to put a giga project together, how do you get other people to believe in you and give you $40 or $50 billion to build an 800 mile pipeline? What does it take? I mean, nobody at this committee table can do it. Not with the thinking that they're evidencing here. I doubt there's anybody in the legislature that can. The only person that's really capable is the man sitting there that's representing the company who said, hey, we're going to give it our best shot. That body is like, whoa, no, I've got an opinion. And I think that we need more taxes. Okay. You and the people you represent don't know anything about building a giga project. Let's put it that way. Let's put it really bold and just talk the truth up front. Very few people in my own neighborhood, throughout the state, just average people, they don't know what it takes to build a giga project. Do you want it or not? Because you've got one human being sitting in front of you in this committee meeting. You've got that human's representing a company that's putting everything on the line and saying they're going to build the pipeline, and this is what they need. So you either accept that, or you go find somebody else. That's your options at the end of the day. You want to raise the taxes and say, "Oh, I'm getting a good deal. We're negotiating here." Okay, well, so what if you're successful at that? Who pays? Who pays? You know who pays? The North Slope's got their tax bent here. We're going to get 18 mils out of this. You know who pays? They don't give a damn, because it's not them who's going to pay. It's the ratepayers. Nobody on the North Slope buys the gas. The cost gets passed through to the consumer. So it's the people in Fairbanks, if they get a spur line built. It's the people in South Central Alaska who are going to be paying higher cost because there's a higher tax put on it. It's the people in Asia that are going to be paying higher costs, if they even agree, because the cost is higher. The people on the North Slope Borough, they don't care. So if they're not incentivized to reduce this or even allow the project to move forward, they can kill the project just by holding their ground on this. I'm glad that it doesn't revolve just around this one committee and this one co-chair. Okay. Yeah, predictability. Thanks, Dean, for participating. Harold, you're going to be nice and you're going to be productive, or you're going to get booted from my show. Michael Dukes can tolerate you. I'm not going to tolerate you if you're going to be a jerk about things. Just noticed. Okay, let's.
I mean 17.99. So it doesn't allow us to negotiate, the way I read this. And that is it doesn't accomplish what I think you're attempting to do, Madam Chair, and what we would love to do. Title 29 is a very complicated process, but important because it's an equity issue among the jurisdiction that has the property tax authority. And it's a very critical issue, because you could literally start charging different rates for different people on different projects. For example, again, in Anchorage, for real estate properties to receive abatement, similar like this on the gas line. It took a state law to establish that, to allow cities to do that. Fairbanks, for example, is now taking advantage of that state exemption to allow that.
Co-chair
Follow-up, Co-chair Fear.
Thank you. I would like to ask if we could have Ledge Legal, Director Nauman, if we could get your municipal drafter on the line so that we can get some clarification. Is that possible? And can we take an at ease until they get on the line?
Okay, so this takes a while.
Sure, I'll have Andrew Dunmeyer call
I'm
in.
going to fast forward us right now.
Good afternoon. This is Andrew Dunmeyer from Ledge Legal. Through the chair, was just advised to call in and was not privy to the earlier discussion, and I'm happy to answer questions about 29-450-050 or other statutes in Title 29. But if the community could maybe rephrase the question, that would be helpful for me.
Thank you, Mr. Dunmeyer. Co-chair Freer or staff, Mr. Zullo?
I think I can reframe the question.
Co-chair Fear.
So the intent of the amendment is to do AVT on the pipeline only and allow the North Slope Borough and the Kenai Peninsula Borough to negotiate under 2945 a rate with the project developer. There was concern from Mr. Begich, and maybe he can restate that concern. But we went back to the statute book and specifically looking at 2945-050 and the ability for municipalities to adopt an ordinance that would allow them to negotiate. And if Mr. Begich wants to restate his concern, then that might be helpful for you in answering that question.
So the flaw here is you negotiate a rate, right? They've already covered this. What rate is the Kenai Peninsula Borough or the North Slope Borough going to negotiate with the project? I mean, if the Kenai Peninsula Borough charges 7, they have to charge it across all taxpayers. So what are you going to do? You're going to drop all your rates? You're going to drop your mill rate on all taxpayers because the project's coming in? Is that what you're going to do? Is that what the North Slope Borough is incentivized to do here? Is drop their property tax rates on other property that's out there that they're receiving tax money on? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's a wish in one hand.
Thank you, Co-Chair Freer. Mr. Begich, if you can hear us, state your name and address or ask or state your statement on 28.
Thank you. Madam Chair, thank you very much. And again, to emphasize, I think we're all on the same page here. And so the question is, if the treatment plant is moved out of current 43 code and into 29, or taken out of 43, that's what the way this is written, it just takes it out of 43 as taxable oil gas property in 43, does it fall under automatically then the taxing authority under 29 because it is a facility in the North Slope Borough? And the concern about that is if it falls under that ability to negotiate a lower mill levy than they currently collect borough-wide.
Mr. Begich, can you restate that last sentence? It was lagging in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me try it again. That basically we want to know, because the way the current amendment works, it takes the gas treatment plant out of section 43, and by default it will probably then fall under the taxing jurisdiction of 29 because it's a facility within the borough. The question is, if it falls under 29, is there a need to put an exemption to allow the negotiation of a lower mill levy than what is currently collected area-wide in the borough? Or even a different type, like a volumetric type?
Thank you, Mr. Begich. That came across a lot clearer the second time. Mr.
Very
Dunmire?
good.
Mr. Dunmire with Ledge Legal. If you can hear us, state your name.
Apologies, I was on mute. This is Andrew Dunmire from Ledge Legal, through the chair. And as I understand the question, we are talking about real property, like a production plant or something that would be real property and not personal property. So municipality would have to tax that on an area-wide or a non-area-wide basis. And if the intent of the committee is to give municipalities the authority to negotiate for a lower tax rate for these kinds of properties, then yes, we would need to put an exemption into Title 29, something along the lines of what might exist already in 2945.050 or some of the other deferrals and exemptions that exist in that chapter.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Dunmire, for that. Co-chair Freer?
Yeah, I'm looking, thank you, Mr. Dunmire, through the co-chair. I'm looking specifically at M. And it says 2945.050M, a municipality may by ordinance partially or totally exempt all or some types of economic development property from taxation for a designated period. A municipality may by ordinance permit deferral of payment of taxes on all or some types of economic development property for a designated period. A municipality may apply an exemption or deferral under this subsection to taxes levied for special services in a service area that is supervised by an elected service area board under AS 2935-460 unless the elected service area board objects to the exemption or deferral by resolution adopted not later than 60 days after the effective date of the municipal ordinance enacting the tax exemption or deferral. A municipality may adopt an ordinance under the subsection only if, before it is adopted, copies of the proposed ordinance made available at a public hearing on it contain written notice that the ordinance, if adopted, may be repealed by the voters through referendum. An ordinance adopted under this subsection must include specific eligibility requirements and require a written application for each tax exemption or referral. This is the specific language I'm referring to, if you can speak to that section.
Mr. Dunmire.
Through the chair to Representative Freer, I agree that that is a section that could be considered for this type of a tax negotiation. The term economic development is defined in Title 29 to mean an action intended to result in an outcome that causes an increase in or avoids a decrease of economic activity, gross domestic product, or the tax base. So just an initial textual reading of that, I think that a production facility could potentially fit into this existing exemption in subsection M.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dunmire, for that. And I have quite a few in the queue here. So I'm going to go ahead and Representative Prox has been.
Before we get to that question, I want to hit up Sarah Davis. Thanks for participating tonight. You took the time to write a rather lengthy question or statement, and I thought I would address it because it deserved it. Is anyone else a little embarrassed watching this whole thing get patched together with Band-Aids just to drag it across the finish line? It's honestly painful. Lack of understanding from so many at the legislative level is pretty alarming. Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't legislators paid year-round? Wouldn't the off-season be the time to actually study and understand these issues before coming back into session? Well, Sarah, where do I start? There's a theory out there that says we need to have term limits. That part of the problem that we have is that there are too many legislators, especially at the national level, that have spent way too long in a position, right? And so the bureaucracy and the corruption and all of that is a byproduct of that length of time in service. Okay. And I'm not going to argue or try to go down that rabbit hole. What I want to juxtapose is brand new legislators. That's what the co-chair is. Diebert, who's on the screen right now, she's been there for a couple of terms, or a couple of years at least. I'm not sure how many legislative terms. I think she came in new last legislature, the last one that I was in. So this is her second term, fourth year. You've got brand new legislators, and you've got the Stedmans and the Lyman Hoffmans that have been there, they're a fixture. They've been there for 30 years, right? This is the problem that you have, is that the longer that you stay in the legislature, the more that you know, the more that you put forward in learning and bettering yourself, and the voters sent you. They sent somebody. They didn't ask the question as to whether you're a good learner or you're self-motivated or a self-starter or intellectually honest or not intellectually honest, but intellectually curious and want to learn, right? That's not what's being talked about with gubernatorial candidates or with legislative candidates, right? We're not making election decisions based on that. So those individuals that get there, is hit or miss as to whether that's what they're going to do is learn hard, like learn the hard things. The tax structure in Alaska with oil and gas is probably the most complex in the world, if not close to like it's right up there. Multiple times people have said this, looking at the tax structure, and consultants will tell you, look, we've done ourselves a disservice with all the complexity that we've put in our tax code. All right. So there's a lot there to understand. You send a teacher like what you've got right here, who's taught English or taught some high school or elementary school, and now they're doing taxes, right? You get what you send. It's the best that we can do. You want a tax expert to come out of your community and go and serve? You want somebody that's got business experience to go and serve? Well, they got to be drafted, because a smarter person's never going to do it. like a person that can do things elsewhere is not going to go down there. Not unless they've got some ulterior motive. They've got some altruistic service mindset, right? Yeah, it's embarrassing. This is what self-government is. It is only as good as the people who we send. And it's just like individual leadership or business leadership. You're only as strong as the people you surround yourself with. A lesson in life that you learn when you're a teenager. Surround yourself with good friends, you'll probably end up making good decisions. Surround yourself with the wrong crowd, and you're going to head in the wrong direction. We're only as good as the people we surround ourselves with. So I'm looking at this staff member. That's why I hit this off. I'm recognizing this staff member is above average. He's doing an excellent job with a brand new chair and a brand new legislator in understanding what's going on. I'm super impressed. It's hard to find brand new staff members who are going to put in the time and effort. And I don't even know his history. Maybe he's had experience in another legislature or somewhere else. I don't recognize him. So I don't think that I've served with him, but yeah, this is who you've got. You know how you get better? You know how you get better people down there? By June 1st, better people have got to raise their hand and volunteer. Or they've got to be nominated or drafted, right? The community's like, you're going. We see what we got. We don't like it. You're going. We'll raise the money. We'll do the campaigning. We're going to send you down there. We need you to get up to speed now. I'll share an example. And this isn't going to make a whole lot of a sense, but just work with me here. I was doing a study on family genealogy and looking at my own history. And I looked at so my family, both sides of my mom and my dad's side of the family, we have traced our genealogy back to the 1600s, 1630s, when our first ancestors came across from England to these shores. And I was looking at one of them that had served as governor of one of the, forget which colony. And this individual and another individual had tag teamed governor roles for a couple of years, and then the other one would serve, and then the next he'd come back in and serve for another couple of years, and then they'd swap again. And so there was an extension of, I mean, it was reality. Who in the colony is going to be best suited to lead? There's probably a handful or one or two, maybe, right? There's just not that many people. But they're agreeing to lead and to move things forward. You don't even have a professional class of politician back then, right? It's just you got who you got. Whoever came across the boat, the one that's most capable, that's going to be the leader. We've got the same situation in our legislature, similar, right? Yes, we have career politicians, but if the majority of the population doesn't want the career politician anymore, then you just don't elect them. But that means you've got to be organized. As hard as it is for the legislator to sit up there and know tax code, it's just as hard for the member of the public to know the candidates, right? So where does it start? It starts right there. If we are not going to engage in our civic duty and civic responsibilities and know and send the right people down to the legislature, the best of who's around us, then that's what you get. You can't wave a magic wand after the election and say, oh man, we need better people down there. Now, the same thing is true is that it is hard to find staff that go down there and help that know things. So who's going to rearrange their schedule to go down there and be a staff member for a legislator and back them up with excellent support? Who's going to do that? That needs to happen too. Now, there is an argument that says other state legislatures do not afford their legislators staff. So all of the work is done by the legislator. There is an argument to be said. We got 300 bills. If I didn't have the ability to if I didn't have the ability to look to my staff members and say, hey, go draft me this bill. And then tomorrow I'll be like, hey, I got another idea. Draft me this other bill. And that's being done by 60 legislators. If the legislator had to actually do the work, we probably wouldn't have as many bills. Just throwing that out there. Anyway, Sarah, great question. That is That is a perennial problem that we have and will continue to experience in our self-government. Remember, it was described as an experiment. This concept of servant leadership and self-government is an anomaly in the human experience. History tells us that strong men, sometimes strong women, but mostly strong men, are required to rule the masses. We have an anomaly in this form of government as the progression of human history that says we can rule ourselves. We can, if we choose to. If we choose to send people down there that are going to spend from the treasury, spend tax dollars, and redistribute them out to their constituency and whoever's got the loudest voice and all of these good idea fairies, if we're going to spend from the treasury and we're going to do that, then we're probably going to bankrupt ourselves. That's the way the system would work. It would just bankrupt itself after a while. I think that's where we're headed because we're not sending the right people to our legislative bodies, thinking mostly at our federal level, but Alaska legislature is no different. So it's hard for me. I've served in the legislature, right? So it's hard for me to sit here and play the victim as the voter, as the person who's not in Juneau. Hard for me to play the victim that says, oh, I can't do anything. Because I did. I went and took the risk and went and got elected and went down there. So I have that experience, right? So it's hard for me to sit back and play the victim. But people who don't have the experience or don't have the capacity to go down there, it's easy for us to just play the victim and say, oh, well, woe's me and I can't do anything. If you can't, then don't expect them to. Like, if you can't learn the process, then don't expect them to learn the process. They're no better than you are. They've just taken the steps necessary to do it. Obviously, they're not any smarter than some of us, right? I mean, we're watching it. We're watching the sausage making. They're just like us. All right. We're never going to get to the end of this meeting now because I've taken probably 30 minutes of a soliloquy here. Let's get back to it. And then I do want to get to the end of the meeting where we finish this off.
In the waiting. So Representative Prox.
I think my questions have been answered for now.
Great. Representative Mears.
Thank you, through the chair. I'd like to explore a little bit what happens with Kenai Peninsula Borough. We've been talking, I'm not intimately familiar with the current discussion around LNG export being tax exempt. I'm wondering if that's 2945-0301 under a required property tax exemption. And I got the statute books out trying to figure out context here. Does a new LNG export facility under this project fall under what I think is an existing exemption for the existing facility, or are we kind of starting from scratch here?
Right,
I think this is for
one already there.
Ledge Legal.
Okay, addressing it to Ledge Legal. Thank you, Rep Mears. Mr. Dunmeyer, did you hear the question?
To the chair, sorry, I could not hear the exact statute section that Representative Mears cited.
Okay, Representative Mears.
You all repeat it. So 2945-0301, it's under required property tax exemptions. We've had some discussions about LNG export being exempt from local property tax. I'm piecing this together live, but I think that might be something that if it's applicable to the existing LNG export facility, but we're talking in this project about a new facility. So I'm trying to parse out with this amendment if Kenai Peninsula Borough actually does have the opportunity to get property tax revenue with it, or if there's something under, the existing exemption that would be an issue. And I'll pull this back to the committee for some more perspective after we get that answer.
Thank you, Rep. Mears. Mr. Dunmire.
For the record, this is Andrew Dunmire from Ledge Legal, through the chair to Representative Mears. I am sorry, but I'm not going to be able to tell you right now whether 2945030A1 would be applicable, but it's something that I can certainly look into, get some research, and get back to you with an answer.
Follow up.
Thank you. And like I said, I'm for the committee, I'm trying to parse this through now. So some of the larger conversations we've been having over in House Energy is the discussions on LNG import versus export. There's two potential projects that are out there. One is utilizing the existing brownfields or the existing facility that had been owned by Marathon that now is owned by Harvest. We had a presentation earlier this year. They said that this facility was able to scale up and be able to be utilized for the project. Glenfarne is pursuing a separate greenfields development that would be able to do import export as part of the project. I'm not familiar enough with the tax, what sounds like discussion around the property tax exemption for the existing facility and how that might play into this. So if the project does take a turn and utilize that facility, then I think this amendment might exclude the Kenai Peninsula Borough from being able to take advantage of this amendment.
So Donna Mears is an engineer. She's educated. Of all the legislators that I don't agree with, she's one of them, like politically. But I can sit down in an office and have an intelligent conversation with her, whereas there are many that I was not able, I would not be able to have an intelligent conversation. I've sat down with legislators who are like, what do you mean the economy is private? The government is the economy. God's honest truth. That was a legislature that told me that the government is the economy. Oh, okay. I see where the problem is. Can I see my way out now? Because we're done.
I'm not familiar enough with it, and I have questions.
Thank you, Representative Mears. I'm not.
I have no idea what to do. Oh, man. Lynn, thank you. We do have a pretty good audience tonight. I just wanted to say that there was a meeting the other night. It was last week sometime. I had over 100 people logged in participating. I don't remember exactly what the topic was, but it was encouraging to see so many people showing up on like 7 or 8 o'clock at night for a 2-hour or 2.5 hour program. I was pretty impressed. I want to go back up here and talk about something interesting because this show is dragging on, and this will actually be somewhat helpful. Thank you, Harold, for being helpful. You ask a question, and this is a good opportunity since we're heading into a Republican convention here. Why was Donna Arduin not utilized more? And many people are like, huh, who's Donna Arduin? I don't. Maybe not. Maybe most people here that are watching are like, I know who she is. So Donna, I was first introduced to Donna as the first Office of Management and Budget, OMB director for Governor Dunleavy in his first term. First term? His first term's first year. Let's put it that way. Okay. So Donna was in charge of putting forward the budget, his first budget. Donna has an extensive background of working for governors and helping turn states around. She's worked for Governor Schwarzenegger. She worked for I want to say Charlie Crist, Florida Governor Bush, Jeb Bush, I believe. A number of governors that she's worked for and helped redo their state finances and get things turned around. Okay. Very, very smart, knowledgeable woman on budgets. She gets canned out of Dunleavy's administration, departs, asked to leave. In the year that the Republicans were in the majority. So this was my last term, the term before the legislature before this, where I was serving. 6 months before the election, I reached out to Donna and I said, hey, look, I would like to offer you a job. I would like to know if you'd come and work for me in the legislature. What I would really like to do is help better our finances and better house finance if we can, right? She agreed. I got reelected. Looking good. We come into the first of the session, and we don't have enough Republicans to make a full Republican organization, right? Because you, the voters, didn't send enough Republicans down there for us to be able to do that. At least the right ones that could work together. I think we technically had enough. They just weren't the right ones. On a side note, I called and asked, had a brain fart there. Newt Gingrich, in January, I called and asked if he would spend some time with our Republican caucus and say, look, I mean, Mr. Speaker, you served through some contentious time. You had the Contract for America. Can you give us any advice on how we should organize and how we should, figure things out to work together? He gave us 30 minutes on the phone, and we had this conversation amongst the Republicans on what his advice to us for organizing. So we were able to organize, and the Republicans were in the majority for those 2 years. Well, it just so happens that the next conversation that was happening through organization is, well, what committee assignments are we going to have? Okay. Well, I've brought Donna Arduin on as staff. Donna's a whiz at budgets. I've just finished 4 years in finance as minority member on finance. And I'm looking at a desire here to help turn this budget around and find some efficiencies and get some control of the spending. And I'm asking Donna to come in and help me do this. And one of our Republican committee members, caucus members, threw a tantrum, threw a fit in private, threw a fit that she was entitled to be co-chair of finance because she served her time. And I had a choice to make. Am I going to fight and make this next 2 years a living hell for our caucus? Or am I going to find another role where I can be useful and move forward? So that's why Donna and I went to Ways and Means, House Ways and Means, and took over legislative budget and audit. That's how that all went about. So I didn't have a responsibility for the annual budget, but what I was able to do is put together a fiscal plan following the 2021 Fiscal Policy Working Group and cobbled together some of my legislation and some other people's legislation and communicate a fiscal plan. I got one of my pieces of legislation through to the House floor, and it sat there. It was a resolution, a constitutional amendment that would have amended the Constitution to say there will be a dividend, period. Didn't set the dollar figure, didn't set anything else other than to say there will be a dividend and it will be paid by law. So set the law, and the law is what you have to follow. That failed on party lines. And I kept it on the legislative floor for 30 days or more, waiting for the other committees to get the other bills that are part of the fiscal plan from the committee to the floor so that we can debate and pass a fiscal plan. But none of the other committees, House Finance basically, where my Republican co-chair was, and 2 Bush Democrats, they didn't want that. They didn't want to play ball. Republicans on Ways and Means didn't even want to allow me to get my sales tax bill out, which was part of the fiscal plan. So why wasn't Donna more utilized? Because Republicans couldn't get their act together. That's why. We had a great opportunity. We had subject matter expertise in our midst, and we could not capitalize on it. We couldn't. It's very frustrating to be completely blunt. Was very frustrating. So I look at what's happening in the legislature, and I say, look, it is all about who you send, and we are only as good as the people who we send down there. That's the reality. You got to send better people. Thank you for Harold for the opportunity to have that conversation. Now y'all know some history of what has occurred and how big of a challenge it is. Even if you bring good people down there, sometimes you can't get it done because you just don't have enough good people, smart people, the right people. Yeah. Fighting that individual turns out worse for the team. Yep, that's my assessment, Kevin. It's exactly right. I made the assessment that says, you know what? if I fight, it'll be a fight every single day. We'll get nothing done because that will be the narrative in the press. It'll be the narrative in every meeting and everywhere. that'll just be it. You just can't get around certain issues. You got to find a different way. So anyway, let's move to the end of the meeting. We're running out of time here. I'm going to fast forward us to the end of the meeting, somewhere around here. See what's going to happen here.
I withdraw Amendment 7G.10.
Thank you, Representative
Perfect
Fields.
Wait.
I object to the conceptual amendment because I'm not sure I caught what it was actually going to do.
Too late. Thank you, Representative Prox, and we have moved on.
So the conceptual amendment was withdrawn.
Amendment 7 has been withdrawn.
All right.
We have, I believe, next we
All
have
right.
amendment number 14, Representative Sadler, and I do just want to note we do have one person on for public testimony.
Certainly. Madam Chair, I'm not going to offer Amendment 14. Thank you.
Okay. Well, seeing that our amendment work is done, I am going to. We did.
Okay, if you catch that, it means there's no more amendments. They're further along than Senate Finance is, if you can believe it. This dysfunction has gotten closer to the goal of getting a bill out of committee than all of the experience in Senate Finance.
Previously leave public testimony open on this bill. Is there anyone in the room that would like to provide public testimony on House Bill 381 as amended? Oh, sorry, I had to open public testimony. Is there anyone in the room? Seeing none, we will move online. We have one person online to offer public testimony on House Bill 381. We've got Edna DeVries, the mayor of the Mat-Su Borough. Mayor DeVries, welcome to House Resources. Please put yourself on record and begin your public testimony. Mayor DeVries, are you on the line? Is she on the phone or on
She's
Teams?
probably muted.
Okay. Is it possible that you're muted?
I'm going to fast forward a little bit.
So anyway, the Mat-Su Borough recognized.
Or public testimony.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, we thank you for allowing us this opportunity to provide the testimony. And I've been sitting here listening to you for the last couple hours. I can't say that it reminds me of being there, but so anyway, the Mat-Su Borough recognizes the importance of advancing the Alaska LNG project to improve energy security, long-term affordability for Alaskans, and the state's competitive position in the global LNG market. We appreciate very much the work this committee has done to refine the House Bill 381 and develop statewide interest. To begin, the Matthew Borough supports the changes from the current tax structure to volumetric tax with a ramp-up period to improve the economics of the project. At the same time, the borough has concerns regarding the proposed restructuring in the revised version of the bill. Now, we did prepare this morning before we listened to the last two amendments that you did. As we understand it, the overall purpose of this bill to restructure the tax system is to increase the livelihood of the project development by reducing tax burden, not to reallocate revenues to jurisdictions that are not directly impacted by the infrastructure, especially when added components such as the spur line, which I know you just did discuss, will have their costs shared by all of us ratepayers. Under House Bill 381, the tax abatement during the wrap-up period does not apply to the spur line. If ratepayers are concerning the cost of the spur line should be subject to the tax abatement described in the bill to keep prices low for Alaska ratepayers. At this time, there appear to be many proposed amendments, and so this is all of the comments that we have at this time, but we are watching the bill closely, but our Borough Assembly has adopted a resolution that supports the value metric tax, protects education funding by exempting the increased property values from new infrastructure, ensures that affected municipalities receive the distribution of taxes, and provides the backstop if ramp-up values are not met over time. We encourage the committee to preserve these goals for the successfulness of the project and to provide all Alaskans with affordable interest. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for your public testimony, Mayor DeVries. Not seeing any.
Thank you for allowing me to give it.
Not seeing anyone else online or in the room to offer public testimony, I'm going to close public testimony. I would like to seek the will of the committee. Are there any final comments on this bill from committee members? Representative Sadler.
Madam Chair, I'm not going to make any final comments.
Representative Colomb.
I just want to thank the co-chairs for working really hard on this bill. I've gotten a lot of feedback from the municipalities. They see the difference between us and the Senate. It's clear that we're trying to make that work for all of Alaska. I think there's a lot of amendments that showed that. The Fairbanks amendment, we were worried about the Kenai, about North Slope. We got community benefit agreements and for everybody up and down. So I just thank you for the civil nature of the committee. I really appreciate how it went, and it was very transparent.
Thank you, Representative Colomb. Representative Elam.
Thank you. I want to maybe, reiterate a little bit of what Representative Colomb had to say there. I just really appreciated being part of the process and the work that all of us put together into doing this, and just hope that we can continue these efforts as we, follow this work through to completion, because I know that economically, from an energy perspective, the jobs, everything that we will be looking at, this is a generational decision that we're all making. And I just appreciate the seriousness that everybody brought to the table to try to make that work. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Elam. Representative Mears.
Thank you. I appreciate that the work we have here in this bill and where we are in this process is mostly focused on impacts to local communities because they're being asked to forego local property taxes. And there's two big impacts. One is construction impacts, and one is, what happens for income for communities as the pipeline, as the project realizes its full potential down the line. I think we've made some I appreciate that that's a lot of the focus that we've had here. I appreciate that we've done some good work on the Fairbanks Spur and that we've been talking about our communities a lot. I think the establishment of the alternative volumetric tax is supportive of the project and of communities, so that as the project is realizing benefit, so do our communities. But for me, the adoption of Amendment 27 keeps me from supporting this bill moving out of committee. I know it will anyway, but I think that removing community benefit agreements and having a limited fund that is controlled by the project is too rigid for communities, and I don't think it's going to meet their needs. So we've done some good work. We always knew that there was going to be more work to do out of here. Like, I purposely didn't not get into the discussion of like how much money would be brought in by this, how much would be foregone, like those economics. I was going to leave that work to Finance Committee anyway. But I think this backstep in this policy removes my support from being able to move it forward.
Thank you. Excuse me.
So, Miguel, you said, what was the final decision with the Fairbanks Spur line? That was one of the amendments that we skipped over in the interest of time. Here's the thing. The bill isn't up on basis until it gets the bill as amended by the committee is not up on basis to read until it gets read across the floor following it being moved out of committee. So just thinking about tomorrow is Thursday, floor sessions on Friday. That'll be the first opportunity for the bill to be read across the floor, that it was passed out of committee with its recommendations. So everybody votes here on whether to pass the bill out of committee. That isn't a voting for or against the bill. It's just voting for to move it out or to keep working on it. Okay. The individual recommendations that the representatives sign, the piece of paper that they pass around after the bill gets moved out of committee, those recommendations are then read across the floor by the clerk in the next floor session. So then you'll hear whether they recommend a pass, a do pass, do pass, do not pass, amend, or no recommendation. Those are your options. That's where you can say, well, look, my representative supported the bill or not. You have to be paying attention with what it is across the floor. The vote here to pass out of the committee is not representative of a vote to pass the bill or not. It's just to move it into the next committee of referral. That's a confusing thing, and people will abuse that to their to the benefit of their argument a lot. Well, that guy voted for that bill. No, he didn't vote. In committee, you're not voting on it. Your individual recommendation is what you sign on the paper, and that goes into the record. The vote here that's not in favor or not. It's just a moving it out of committee. Anyway, so the question is, what happened with the Fairbanks Spur line? After Friday, the actual bill will be read across the floor, and that will include any amendments that they put into the bill. Now you will be able to read the bill and find out what they actually did. Or we could back it up and try to find the sausage making and figure out what they did with the amendment. Either way, I made the choice in the interest of time here to not do that. So we'll be able to find out. The other way you can find out is the bill is going to go to finance next, and finance will have a conversation about what the bill is doing. And at that point, when it goes to finance, the version that is passed out of this committee gets sent to finance, and that will be on basis. That will be in the finance committee documents for reference as well. So we'll be able to see that at that time. Most of the time, the amendments that are brought forward in committee are also put in the documents section of the bill on basis on the website. And so you can go read the amendment that they added or tried to add with regard to the spur line, if that's what ended up happening. You can go and do that research too. I'm going to wait and see what the actual bill language is and kind of just get a summary of what this committee did instead of going back to the committee meeting and trying to figure it out. Easier to just read the bill for myself. It's just easier to read the bill and see what the result is of the sausage making. Anyway, I hope that answers the question. And we'll probably have a conversation about it again here when we follow along what's happening in House Finance. Yeah. This is not an anomaly to the legislature. I have watched school board meetings and borough assembly meetings where patting ourselves on the back is like the easy thing to do. We've done such a great job. No one else will say it, so we have to say it for ourselves. Yeah. When the line was routed, Delta had a spur. I'm sorry, Dixie, you said when the line was routed, Delta had a spur line. What happened to it when the line was routed? You mean when the project was put together, there was a spur line to Delta? Is that what you're asking? I'm unaware. The only spur line that I know that has been a part of the conversation that I'm aware of is the one to Fairbanks. Miguel says, don't agree with this amendment, but we need a spur line to Fairbanks. Okay, I am unaware here, Miguel. We do need a spur line to Fairbanks. That is for sure. Rick says, what's the bottom line? What's Glenfarne going to do? Who knows? Who knows what they're going to do? Again, if Glenfarne can find the investors, let's play the devil's advocate here and say the legislature just can't get it out from under their own weight, and they're going to leave the taxes where they're at. If Glenfarne can find investors who will give them the money, it likely means that the money costs more, so the project costs more, and it likely means that the cost of gas that you and I pay and that the export customers pay is all greater. Okay. So if Glenfarne can find the investors and find the agreements, then maybe they move forward with whatever the legislature comes up with. How bad do people want gas? How bad do the investors want to invest in a project like this? Those are all questions the legislature is probably never going to be able to ask and answer. Glenfarne will find out. They will go to the ends of the earth to find the money. And if the money's not there because people don't trust this project, they say there's too much taxes. We don't want to be investing our money so the state can take taxes. I mean, that's in essence what they would be saying. Then they can't find the money and the project can't move forward. And then we will be able to look to the legislature and say, you played a part in scuttling this project. The project said we needed a lower tax rate. The investor said they needed a lower tax rate. You didn't want to play ball. You didn't care. You cared more about revenue to the state than you did low cost or lower cost gas, consistent supplies of gas, economic activity. You didn't care about any of that for Alaskans along the rail belt. You cared more about revenue to the state. Or in the case of the borough up in the north and south of the pipeline, right? You cared more about your taxes to the boroughs. Let's see. Um, 2013. Oh, you're talking about a project that didn't get built. You fit right in with the Senate or the Senate resources conversation, Dixie. I'm kidding. Don't shoot me. Whatever the project was with Exxon, that's not this project. It's a completely different project. I know that it started out that way, but there's no, to the best of my knowledge, there is no plan for a spur line. Now, maybe there are offtake points in the pipeline that a spur line could be put in. That's a question we'd have to ask Glenfarne. I don't know the answer to that question, but the only spur line that's being discussed in this project thus far is the one to Fairbanks. I can say that with certainty. Can other spur lines be built? I don't know the answer to that question. And I would be hesitant to ask it at this point. The last thing we want is more communities jumping up and saying, "Hey, what about me? I want a spur line too." Glenfarne's like, you know what? You Alaskans just can't get out of your own way, can you? You're like, you really want this pipeline? You just want it your way? You don't know how to build a pipeline. We're trying. You're making it very difficult for us. Craig says, I wonder what interest increase these committee meetings. Wonder what investor interest increase these committee meetings. Not necessarily because of tax reasons, but just fear of repercussions from the ignorance of the legislature. Yet, I don't think the state of Alaska and the state legislature has a very good reputation outside of the state of Alaska. Maybe most legislatures don't, but if you're a business entity dealing with a legislature is it's like playing craps, right? I mean, it's roll the dice. You don't know what you're going to get. Very risky. Maybe anybody that watched the whole oil tax credit debacle where the legislature says, hey, we got a good idea. We want oil exploration on the North Slope. So we're going to give you tax credits. You go do that and you can qualify for tax credits. Just send us the paperwork and apply, and we'll apply these tax credits to your future tax. Oh, you know what? It ends up we're going to pay you money. Oh, so sorry. Years later. So sorry. We don't have enough money. Turns out we can't actually pay those tax credits. We're choosing not to pay those tax credits. And industry's like, you what? But we have an agreement here. You, state, owe us. Legislature, you owe us. This is like a contractual thing. You owe us these tax credits. Subject to appropriation. Yeah. Anybody that's watching the recent history of Alaska legislature from a business perspective would say, don't touch that with a 10-foot pole. High risk. Yeah. This is an example as to why it's difficult and why our structure is disincentivizes economic activity. And this is when you start peeling the onion back and looking at what drives decisions in the legislature. And the biggest decision the legislature ever has to do is the spending of money. It is the highest priority. It's the thing that everybody comes down there for, is to spend money. Okay. And the structures that we have incentivize certain behavior. And this is what happens when you've got a legislative process that is completely disconnected from most of your economic activity, your private sector GDP, your economic engine, right? The only thing it's connected to is oil engine. Very little of anything else. Corporate income tax, mostly your oil companies, your larger companies in the state. Fish taxes, very small. Taxes from mineral development, mines, very small. Permanent fund earnings, growing bigger and bigger every day. So what is the legislature? What are they incentivized to think about? Well, how can we maximize permanent fund earnings, and how can we keep our oil field going? Low cost energy for an economy that doesn't put any money into the state coffers. There's nothing incentivized. What do we care about that? This structure that we have in the state that's the byproduct of it. If you choose to say, don't tax me, tax the oil companies and tax the permanent fund, we'll just we'll be able to have our state government and not have to pay for any of it. Somebody else can pay for it. Well, great. You don't have taxes, but you also don't have a thriving economy because there's no incentive to do things like lower the cost of energy for your economy. Just saying. Incentives matter. I think Donna would back me up on this too. If you want to go ask her, ask her if I know what I'm talking about. Incentives matter. It's no need to be afraid of a statewide sales tax. You're going to fight as a conservative and you're going to say, oh, the government's just going to spend more money. Yeah, they're going to. They're always going to. The government is always going to. The people sitting in this committee meeting here, they're always going to want to spend more money. And it doesn't matter whether it's permanent fund earnings or it's sales tax revenue. They're going to want more. It is the perennial battle that self-government always fights, except you don't have the rich people in the battle right now. The rich people can sit out and they can say, yeah, just take it out of the permanent fund earnings. You don't need me. You don't need me in the conversation. I can sit out and not participate. Except for the ones who are tied. Their business activity is tied to state spending. They're participating and they're not participating in your favor. They're sucking from the government tit too. How do you fix all that? You restructure the tax revenue, the taxing structures, so that the correct incentives are there for the legislature to care about. Yep, you're going to have to fight the legislature's propensity to spend no matter what. But what incentives are in place for economic activity? You don't have them now. Anyway, it is just a problem, a big problem. It's got a solution. It just needs more people to be thinking about it. Anyway, so we're going to pop into probably House Finance when this bill gets to House Finance, which it'll be right across the floor on Friday. So they'll probably take it up Monday or maybe Friday afternoon if House Finance wants to. How motivated are they to get it done before the end of the session? Remains to be seen. Hopefully the reason the bill wasn't taken up in Senate resources was because they were drafting a new CS. They alluded to the fact that they might have a new CS. So maybe that's why they weren't able to talk about it and just give them the benefit of the doubt. Because the drafters, legislative legal drafters, hadn't drafted the CS yet. Maybe that's what they're waiting for. So tomorrow, hopefully we have a CS or some movement on the Senate side on their bill to see what's going to come out there. Anyway, thanks everyone for participating. You know, do me a great favor. I see the number of people who are online and I see the number of people have given a thumbs up or a like or a subscribe. If we could get those two numbers to match, that'd help. It'd show that there's people participating and they like the show. So hit that like, hit that subscribe. Let's increase the pool of people who are participating. And I can't think of a better way for people to show up and ask questions, and they've got my attention and I'll give them the answers. Some of you can give them the answers because I don't have all the answers, but I'll do my best. And if you want to support the show, financially, you can do that on my website, OversightLIVE.com. There's a donate link. I'd be honored if you could spare me a couple dimes. All right. We're going to call it quits. Thank you for participating tonight. Have a great night, and we will see you. We might see you tomorrow. Now that I think about it, we got this convention coming up, Republican convention down here in Soldotna, and I'm going to be participating in it. I'll see some of you there because I've seen some comments to the effect. Don't be strangers. If I can, I'm going to make it back to do the show. But if not, it likely means that Friday or Monday will be the next show. So we'll see what happens. 7 p.m. If I'm here, I'm here. If not, you'll know where I'm at. All right. Have a good night. We'll see you when we see you.